welcome to our session, How to Publish in Academic Journals. You probably heard me. We've had over 900 people register for our session today. We're really, really excited to have you with us. My name is Mary Beth Gassman. I'm a professor at Rutgers University, and I also have the honor of being the executive director of the Proctor Institute for Leadership, Equity, and Justice and the Rutgers Center for Minority Serving Institutions. And I know there are a lot of you with us who follow both of our organizations, so thank you so much. We're excited because we are co-sponsoring this event today with the Association of University Presses. This is one of many events that we have done with the association. They have been a wonderful, just a wealth of knowledge, and we're incredibly grateful. So I'll tell you just a little bit about today's event, and then I'm going to introduce very briefly our panel, and we're just going to start. We're going to start with answering some questions. So the way that things will work today is I'm going to ask our panel some questions, and then we'll do that for about 35 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to all of you, and you should put your questions in the Q&A. Not the chat, put your questions in the Q&A, and we will try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. I know this is a really, really hot topic, and so we will do our best to do that. So I'm very excited. We have four amazing individuals with us today. We have Kai Gibson Chilenge, who is the managing editor of the University of Pennsylvania Press. We have Susan Kirtley, who is a professor of English at Portland State University. We have Tara Sanders, who is Saunders, maybe, who is a senior production editor at Purdue University Press. And we have Erica Teal, who does journals production manager for the University of Wisconsin Press. So what I love about this is we have an amazing diversity of expertise. So we are going to start off with an opening question. And again, thank you all for being here with us. I really, really appreciate it. So here's what I'd love to ask each of you just very briefly to share your role in scholarly publishing and how it connects to supporting authors in their published work. And let's see, Kai, why don't you go first?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so as a managing editor at Penn Press, my role sits at the center of the publications process from manuscript acceptance through final production. I coordinate the workflow among authors, peer reviewers, acquisition editors, copy editors, designers, and production teams to ensure that each project moves efficiently and maintains the press's scholarly and editorial standards. A key part of my work involves helping the editors of each of my journals navigate the often complex stages of revision, copy editing, permissions, and production timelines. Also making sure that their voice and intellectual contributions remain central to the finished work. I see my role as both operational and supportive in that way. And ultimately, I play a role in translating an author's research into a polished, accessible publication and ensure that authors and editors feel informed, confident, and supported throughout the publications process.
All right, thank you. Erica, how about you?
I kind of handle everything after Kai. I'm a production manager, so someone like Kai, a managing editor, would deliver files to me, and at that point, I'm the person coordinating with the typesetter, who's the one who gets everything ready into like the nice, pretty PDFs and not just the Word files. I work with our printer, I work with the online hosting platform, and so I'm handling everything after the point of copy editing and review and all of that process.
Great, great. Susan.
I'm Susan Kirtley. As mentioned, I'm a professor at Portland State University. Also, just wanted to say I'm also an author of several scholarly books and articles, and I have three under contract right now. So those of you who are trying to get published, I feel you. I know that struggle. It's really a challenge. And in terms of this particular webinar, my particular expertise that's useful is I'm also the editor, have the honor of editing Inks, the Journal of the Comic Study Society. Our goal is to publish exceptional scholarship. And as part of that, one of our goals is to be mentors, to support our authors. And this is scary stuff, sending these things you've worked so hard on out into the world. And so one of my goals is always to be helpful and constructive and show you the way forward, whether it's I'm the person who's writing that acceptance or that revision request. So I'm that person and I agonize over it because I want to give you the tools to create that exceptional scholarship. So sometimes it might not feel that way, but I really, and I and my team, we are on your side.
Great, thank you, thank you. I love all these different aspects of the journal publication process. And Tara, how about you?
Yes. So for Purdue University Press, I'm the head of our journals program. In practice, what that means is that I am doing a mix of what Kai does and what Erica does. In my production editor role, I'm the one who is guiding accepted manuscripts through the publication process. So that means copy editing and typesetting. For some of those, I might be the person who is actually performing the copy editing and typesetting. For others, I'm just facilitating that and interfacing with the folks who are doing that. However, I also serve as a managing editor for Shofar, which is an interdisciplinary Jewish studies journal that we publish. So that means I have some insight into the peer review and editorial parts of the journal's process as well. Kai said it really well in terms of supporting editors through that part of through considering manuscripts, organizing feedback, and then helping to communicate that information to authors who are navigating that review process and that revision process. So from soup to nuts.
All right. And again, I love this series that we're doing because I think that it allows us to have so much transparency around actually what goes on. And, you don't always get to talk to people who are doing your job. So this is, this is really great. All right. So, Susan and Tara, I've got a couple questions for you. One of them is, from your perspective, what steps should authors take to ensure that their manuscript is as strong as possible before submission? What should they be doing? Whoever wants to go first.
I can start us off. I would really encourage authors, and I think this is a theme you'll probably hear repeated, is to read the journal you're submitting to. So read it, sort of see what they're looking for, see how it's formatted, get a sense of what they're looking for. And so read carefully. Also, read the submission guidelines very carefully. So make sure that your word count, if they want Chicago style, give them Chicago style. Don't give them any reason to say no, So read those submission guidelines carefully. Read the journal itself. And then I would also think about your own goals. Career-wise, what is the best fit? So think strategically. Don't undersell yourself. Go for that journal that you think, would be a good fit. But also think strategically. So if you're doing interdisciplinary work, maybe you're doing something around gender studies and medieval authors, and you're like, should I send it to, a journal focused on gender studies or medieval? Well, think about what kind of jobs are you applying for? So if you're going to be focusing in medieval in your job search, maybe that's the journal. So think strategically, but most importantly, read the journal, read the submission guidelines.
Susan, that's so well said. I would absolutely echo that in terms of making sure that you are familiar with what the journal is asking. And if you have questions about that, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to whoever the contact person is for that journal, a managing editor or somebody. Most people in that role will be delighted to answer questions that you have. There really is no such thing as a dumb question. The other thing that I would note is that perhaps if you're publishing in a language that is not your first language, I would encourage you to get a native speaker of that language to read over your work. Most editors and reviewers really will respond to the ideas that you are trying to convey. So this is not a thing where you need to feel like a typo is going to sink your work or something like that. But it always helps to have just that extra amount of feedback to tighten things up and make it easier for the people who are encountering your work in these evaluation stages to understand the value and the import of the ideas that you're presenting. And that might be, oh, I speak another language and I'm trying to publish in English, or I speak English and I'm trying to publish in German. But in a more colloquial sense, it might be that you are a historian, but you are trying to get yourself published in an American Studies journal. So if you're thinking in an interdisciplinary sense, trying to cast a net as wide as you can, get someone from that field, get a friend, a colleague, a mentor to read over that, and make sure that you are positioning yourself in terms of the language of that field in ways that are going to make your work shine in that context.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm just going to add that I think anytime that you can have people read your work before you submit it is so, so important, right? I always say it's good to get feedback from someone who you know and who cares about you and wants you to be at your best than have to, maybe take it from someone who doesn't know you so well. So, and that actually leads me to my next question, which is how should and I think this is one of the most critical things. How should authors handle critical feedback or conflicting reviewer feedback? And how can, another question related to that is how can early career researchers kind of navigate desk rejections and take peer-reviewed feedback in stride? So how do you do that? And that's for Susan and Tara.
It's hard, I'm just going to say, it's hard. I feel you. I mean, every time I get peer review on something I'm working on, I have that immediate sort of wash of emotion, like, oh, it's terrible, and I just want to acknowledge that it's hard because this is something we've put our hearts and souls and a lot of energy into. Um, I would really encourage people, you read it, you go for a walk, you take a step back, let it sit for a little bit, read it again. And again, this is my own personal experience as an author who's gotten feedback. And then, and I'm like, oh, it's terrible. They're terrible. They don't know anything. And then I'm like, okay, maybe they do. Maybe they do. So give yourself some time to process it. I would encourage folks to, if you have conflicting feedback, as pointed out, we're here to help you. You might want to reach out to the editors and say, hey, this person said this person said this. Can you tell me what you think? And so forth. So we're here to collaborate. So reach out to us because sometimes you do, get conflicting feedback and it's hard to know. So I would encourage people to give it some time, take a step back to take it in. If it's still confusing, reach out to the editorial staff or maybe you have colleagues who can help you. You have a mentor, you have a friend. Ask for their advice. What are they thinking? Again, we're all in this together trying to create the best possible scholarship. And I think it really helps to have a community supporting you. And again, I just wanted to acknowledge to all of you, it is a challenging process. And I will also say, having been through it on both ends as an editor and as an author, even though it's been hard for me when I get to the other end, I'm like, you know what? It actually is a lot better now that I've taken in that advice and revised. So it's a hard process, but it really is, in my mind, a good one designed to create great scholarship.
Susan, that's beautifully said. You hit many of the points that I would emphasize for sure. Especially that idea of reaching out. Like if it turns out that you really do have conflicting feedback, there's nothing wrong with getting in touch and saying, hey, do the editors have strong feelings about which advice they'd like you to be guided by? However, the other thing really may be that you may need to sit and think about how this work sits in relationship to your overall intellectual project. Perhaps this is a small piece of this article represents a small piece of a book project, right, that you're doing. And so it may make more sense to take it in a different direction. It may make more sense to pursue one direction versus the other. And so some of that is, also your sense of what you want this article ideally to do for you. I will say that Shofar asks authors who are submitting revised work to provide a cover letter that discusses which revisions they've made and which they haven't and why. And so that can be, even if the journal that you are revising for doesn't ask you to do that, it can be a useful strategy even just for yourself to keep track of how the manuscript has changed over time. So I recommend that. And the other thing is that conflicting feedback can sometimes be a sign that some other part of the concept or some other part of the article actually needs work. Sometimes those downstream changes are the result of sort of upstream choices. And so, something you're going to hear us say a lot is talk to a mentor, talk to a trusted friend, talk to someone who knows your work, the development of your ideas, and see how they interpret the feedback. And I guess the other thing I might say, and this is kind of a last ditch or whatever, but if the feedback is really tendentious, right? Like if this is, wow, thank you for your paper on hot dogs, but I really wish this was about hamburgers. If they're asking you to turn it into something that it's just not, it's possible that this journal isn't the right fit for your work. You can take the feedback and consider moving to a different publication. So that's a last ditch sort of thing, but it is an option.
Thank you. And I'm really glad that all of you are talking about, like, if you have a question, contact me, right? I think sometimes, especially I remember when I was an assistant professor, you are kind of nervous about contacting people and you're like, oh, they probably don't want to hear from me. But I love that you're all saying, reach out and ask questions. And I think that we're all better off when we do that. So thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move to Erica and Kai and talk a little bit more about the production process. So from acceptance to publication. And I don't know about other authors on this call, but I have to say that I still get super excited when I get a manuscript accepted. I mean, I try to like celebrate that, even though, I've been doing that for a long time, but it's still really exciting. So I think this is the really exciting part. So once a manuscript is accepted, what should authors expect during the production process from copy editing through that final publication? And Eric, I'll start with you.
Well, after that point, you will probably get some sort of email from the managing editor with final instructions if you need to submit one last final version, or if they're just going to take the last thing you submitted. Then it will generally go to copy editing. You may or may not see those copy edits. I think most of our journals do send the copy edits back to the authors just to ensure that, the copy editor hasn't accidentally changed your meaning or misunderstood jargon from your field. And so you would have the opportunity there to, agree with those or disagree with them. This is not the opportunity to rewrite your paper. That ship has sailed, unfortunately. So we do ask that we're really keeping it to making sure it's correct and clear and that your meaning hasn't been changed. And then you would generally get to see, at least at UW, you would get to see the first pass of proofs, which is the PDF version that will eventually get perhaps printed and posted online. And we just ask that you look at it carefully. Again, make sure there are no introduced errors, that your name is spelled correctly, that your affiliation information hasn't changed, and that everything looks good and nothing is, looking wonky, essentially.
Thank you. Kai, what about you?
Yeah, I would say, our processes at Penn Press are echo or similar to what Erica just described there, what she outlined. So yeah, and in the final stage though, I was just going to add that once, the proofs are approved, usually we tend to have maybe one or two proof stages are ideal. We don't, typically we prefer not to have one or two sets of proofs generated because as Erica said, this is not the phase where the expectation is that you'll have a significant rewrite for any portion of the manuscript. But once the proofs are approved, then the manuscript's moved, through that final corrections phase, and any quality checks are done before publication is done in either print or digital format, or both in some cases, depending on the publication. And yeah, throughout that process, myself and my editors, we help guide the authors and to keep the project on schedule to meet those publication deadlines.
Great. And speaking of on schedule, what is roughly for people the timeline that's typical from submission to publication? And I realize it's different depending on the journal and the backlog and all of those things, but let's just say maybe even from acceptance to publication for all of you, what's a typical timeline for that? Is it 3 months, 6 months, a year? What do you think?
For some of our journals, it's pretty fast, especially if it's a journal that has preprint, so it gets posted online. The final version submitted by the author gets posted before the entire publication production process has happened. So those can be really quick between acceptance and getting posted online. And depending on the journal, that can also just be, a few more months before it's in print. And I also have a journal that is posting preprints for 2028 publication. So it can vary a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
for me, my experience is it's about on average is about 3 to 6 months. But like Erica said, that we have a couple of journals currently that are preprint on the preprint model. So yeah, I mean the articles are moving quickly. They're posting as they're done, as they're completed incrementally. Um, so yeah.
Great, great. Okay, another question I have for Erica and Kai. What are some of the most common issues that authors encounter during copy editing and the proof stages, and how can you prepare to respond efficiently? Because I know that that's really important. So, what do you think?
I'll let Kai handle any copy editing stuff because that generally happens before I see it.
Okay.
But for production, it's mostly figures end up being a problem sometimes. They're either low resolution or they don't actually belong to the author and they haven't gotten permission. And so then we have to kind of sit and wait for a better version of the file or for the author to get permission from whoever does hold the copyright. And so making sure you're really on top of your figures can really speed up the process.
Great. Kai?
Yeah, I was going to say one common challenge that I encounter is the surprise at the level of detail involved in the copy editing queries that are returned to authors, especially around citation, the completeness of citations. Like Erica said, permissions, issues with permissions, consistency in terminology throughout the articles, or the formatting of the tables and figures. And I sometimes find that it is at this stage where there may be the temptation to make substantive revisions, or at the first proof stage between the copy editing phase and the first proof stage. And this is when we expect that changes should be minimal at this point. I think authors, what they can do is prepare by keeping a clean and consistent reference list before submission and maintaining, a set of organized files for figures and tables, and setting aside time to review the copy edits and proofs very carefully. Yeah.
Great. You mentioned some things that authors can do to kind of make sure that things go smoothly. Are there any other things in the writing process or early on that you would advise authors to do to make sure, I mean, I'm hearing organization, right? To make sure that it's faster and it's smoother. Anything else that you might advise? Either of you?
No, I think Kai covered it well.
Okay.
That, keeping yourself organized, keeping everything straight helps Kai and helps me keep everything organized on our end of things. And it just makes the whole process so much more streamlined.
Okay, great.
Can I
Great.
just
Yeah,
jump in and just very quickly would say, just to add to this, I would really encourage people to keep the lines of communication open because I have had situations where we're trying to get someone to sign off on proofs or we have an issue with an image or something and people won't answer their email for a week or two and we're just stuck, just waiting for this. You deserve your time. Like you deserve your time to take a break. But if we're in the middle of, this issue coming out and you're going on vacation, send me a note. Let me know. Like let the staff know. Keep in communication. Keep those lines of communication open. And again, I'm not saying you should have your time to not be working, but just communicate that to us. So we'll say, okay, we know that we can contact them in 2 weeks and get this question answered instead of just me staring at my computer like, when is this going to come through? So just keep those lines of communication open, please, and don't ghost us.
I agree 100%.
And if I can just note one thing, I would just say whatever changes you need to make earlier in the process is better. If you recognize that there's some sloppiness that you want to fix in your citations, etc., after a work has been accepted, but before it's entered copy editing, perfect. That's the time to do it. If you realize once copy edits have come back that that's when things need to change, excellent. It's harder and harder, and you will incur and create more and more stress for yourself and for the people working on your manuscript the later on in the production process it is.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So Susan and Tara, I've got a couple questions for you. First of all, wondering, what do you find are the biggest challenges that authors face today in getting published, and how can they overcome them? And I can tell that that we've got lots of people interested in that topic as well. So what are some of the biggest challenges, and what can we do to kind of move forward?
I think that I personally would love to see more people submitting and taking that leap. And I recognize that it's scary. And I think there's some folks, who are like, oh, I'm waiting for it to be perfect. I'm waiting for this perfect moment, this perfect manuscript. In my opinion, things are never going to be perfect. Yes, you want to read the submission guidelines, read the journal, feel strong, have some friends and colleagues read it, but then send it, finish it, and send it. Just send it out. And the cool thing is, you're going to get feedback on it to make it even better. So you get a revise and resubmit. Awesome. That's great. You will get really, like, we have amazing reviewers, and they work really hard to give substantial, constructive, helpful feedback, and you can take it and you can make it even better. So don't wait for that perfect time or that perfect thing. Just send it. Just get it out the door. And keep doing it, send the things out, take the leap, reach out to folks, ask them what they're looking for. But I would and I know it's hard, but just send it. I think getting over that hurdle and just sending it out.
Thank you.
That's so aptly said. Yeah, there's something that we often say, or that, at least, I heard when I was in grad school, right, is that writing is thinking, right? So you are engaging in the process. Even when you're drafting that manuscript, you are continuing to think and develop your argument and incorporate, realize that you need more information, etc. When you have that final draft of that manuscript, of that article that is ready to be submitted for evaluation to a journal, you've just entered a new stage of the writing process in a very real fashion. So to whatever degree you can release that perfectionism to allow that process to continue, that will be very valuable. But the other thing I would say is that the particular challenges in your field are going to be so intensely dependent on your field. These are things that you may already know from talking with peers and mentors, etc., where they're finding opportunities, where they're finding challenges. But I think whatever field you're working in, being able to really speak to the distinctiveness and relevance of your work for the given audience that you're trying to engage, being able to, your elevator pitch, right? Same thing that you're working on to get into, these jobs, etc. Being able to encapsulate that and make it relevant for your audience is super helpful, I think, for publishing.
Thank you both for that. It reminded me of when I was a brand new assistant professor, and I went into this very fancy pants professor's office who looked like he had published so much, and he just looked like he had a great office. And I was going back to my little cinder block one, and I said to him, I said, how did you publish so much? And he said, I'm not a perfectionist. And he said, you have got to learn, young people need to learn not to be a perfectionist. He said, editors and reviewers are your friends, and they will help you to be better. And he said, the thing you need to always keep in mind is that there's no such thing as perfect. So, and even if there was, it's usually not as beautiful and not as interesting. And, so it was good advice for me. Here's something that we were kind of talking about in that seeking perfectionism, right? Is it typically has to do with writing. And I'm wondering what kind of strategies that you think can help researchers and authors improve their writing for clarity, for academic rigor, and also for impact, because that's really important. So, Susan and Tara, what do you think about that?
You should go first because I've gone first. You go first.
Sure. I think I would read. I'm not sure I have anything that's particularly groundbreaking on this. I would say if you have writing centers at your university, like get a sense of what resources are on the ground near you, whether that is at your institution, whether that is in your field, whether that is in your informal network. Are there writing groups at your university, particularly for early career faculty sorts of people? Do you have a writing center on campus that offers support not just to students, but also to faculty? The more that you can get your work in front of people, I would say the better it will be. I guess I encourage people to have a number of different audiences read it. We always, because obviously, if you're writing something that is very technical, it's not that it needs to be sort of dumbed down so that any random person could encounter it. But it can sometimes be really useful to give it to somebody who isn't a specialist to say, you may not be able to hop into the lab and recreate the work, but is the significance of what I'm doing clearly stated? That can be a useful sort of check. Um, Susan, I'll punt it over to you. There may be other things you say that elicit further comment.
I would agree wholeheartedly about, sharing your work. I think it is helpful to be mindful and aware of your process, what you need to do to write. I would encourage people not to be afraid of the terrible first draft. So personally, I have published several books and articles and things, but each time I publish something, I'm like, well, that's it. I've got nothing left. And it's a struggle. Like I want to respect and honor that. It's a challenge to write. I personally think that I'm a terrible writer, but I'm a good reviser, So know your process. Know what works for you. For me, I have to write this well, first I have to agonize for a long time, but then I write a terrible first draft. I revise and I revise. And then I think it's so helpful, as you've pointed out, to share with other folks and they can, because it makes sense in my brain, but I need to know that it makes sense to someone else. And it depends on the journal. Like you said, maybe it's a really technical one. You want to get some readers who can make sure that all of your stats are okay. Maybe you want to make sure that it's very accessible. So get some readers, get some feedback before you even send it off. So I just want to say I respect the process and acknowledge that it's challenging, but take advantage of these resources, fellow faculty, writing groups, writing centers, colleagues across the country, across the world. We're all in this together and can help one another create better scholarship and better writing.
Thank you. I love that you said, write a crappy first draft, like just get it out, because I find that people who are more prolific or productive tend to do that. And it can be really helpful. Every word that comes out does not have to be perfect. And polish, polish, polish is like the motto that I like. So I have one more question for our wonderful panel, and then I'm opening it up. We have tons of questions, but please put in your questions because we will have ample time to answer them. My last question for all of you is, can you share any books or workshops or online tools that you'd recommend for researchers to help navigate academic publishing, especially for peer-reviewed articles? And anybody who wants to go, Susan, you're right in front of me. So if you want to go first, and then anybody else have anything, feel free.
There are I think, a couple of different books about writing a journal article and dissertation, and I can't remember the exact names, but I'm sure we can get those for folks. But one other tip I wanted to mention is if you can go to conferences, because it's like you can present your work and get feedback on it immediately. And I have found that very helpful because you get immediate feedback from colleagues in your field. And this is a bonus. It gives me a deadline. It forces me, like, if you're going to be standing in front of people talking about something, you better have something written. So I just wanted to emphasize that conferences can be really, really generative forcing you to write, and then you get quick feedback. So I wanted to put a plug in for that.
Great. Anyone else have any resources they want to share?
I would say if you have journals or if you're looking ahead to a book project, if there are presses that you're most interested in publishing with, go ahead and follow them on social media. Start to think about these folks as being perhaps eventual nodes in your professional network. If they have presentations on how to publish scholarly work, et cetera, consider attending those. Purdue, my director, does regular presentations on the publishing process for faculty and staff at our university. So see what sorts of things are available at your university as well.
All right.
Yeah.
I was just gonna, was someone else gonna add? Kai, was that you? Yeah,
Myself.
go
Yeah.
ahead.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to just have a shameless plug here. I helped develop, I serve on the faculty outreach committee for the association, the AU Press's faculty outreach committee. And we developed a publishing information deck that is available. I believe that we can drop the link in the chat on the Ask Up initiative page of the Association of University Presses. There's a link for a slide deck there that is kind of a playbook for walking you through the publications process, from identifying a journal or publication that is appropriate for your work, and moving through that process, and different vocabulary. The deck offers different vocabulary that you'll come across during that publications process. So I think that would be helpful to just have as a resource, a guide to keep and set aside and refer to.
All right. Thank you. I think we just put that in the chat. And I was going to add that there are two resources that I regularly recommend, and we're putting those in the chat too. And that is Helen Sword's Stylish Academic Writing, which is published by Harvard University Press. I think it's one of the best books about writing out there, especially if you're an academic. And then Wendy Belcher's book on how to write a research article. I think it's in like 12 weeks or something. I buy that for all kinds of people. I think it's a really, really good book. I love to give those two books out. So shout out to both of them. I find them both to be lovely individuals too. So I wanted to give those. All right, our team, are we ready to answer some questions? Okay, so there's one in here that I think a lot of people, it goes through their mind, and I'd love for you to answer this. Whoever wants to, just kind of raise your hand. Here it is. Are you able to submit the same paper to multiple journals and then, based on final outcomes, decide which journal to publish it in? That right there is a question, that I think at the outset, sometimes people ask that question because they're just not familiar with how it all works. So anyone want to answer that question? I know the answer to it, but anybody want to take it? Tara?
Sure. The vast majority of journals will not permit you to do that. For Shofar, the one that I know the best, we say specifically one of the things that we ask you to aver or to warrant is that this work is not under consideration by any other publication. So there may be a few out there that are more loosey-goosey. Our undergraduate research journal is fine with that, but you are not undergraduates. So most publications are going to ask you to, for the time period that they're considering it, that is the only place that should be considering it.
Great. Thank you. Susan, did you want to comment at all? Are you good?
Yeah, I was just going to say I would agree with that, because then you end up sort of there's all sort of moral reasons why you're duplicating effort and so forth. But I would, single submission. And as you say, there might be some journals where that's not the case, but it is considered a breach of etiquette, if not anything else, a violation of the rules to send it to a lot of different journals at the same time. It's no, with that said, it's absolutely fine for you to reach out and say, hey, what is your timeline or something? We're happy to talk to you about that. Communicate with us if you need something for tenure or for whatever reason, we can say, this is our timeline, that's fine, but single submission. And again, I would also like to say one of the reasons it takes so long is that, as the editor, I find reviewers and I find folks who are incredibly knowledgeable. But these are folks who are also supervising dissertations and writing their own books. And it takes time for them to agree. It takes them time to read your article, to respond to it. And then after that, I get the reviews, I synthesize them, I write you a letter, I agonize over it. I want to be as, helpful as possible. All of this takes time. Uh, we're not doing it to antagonize you. Really, it's to give you the best possible feedback. But I understand it's hard to wait, so feel free to reach out.
All right. So we have a lot of questions. I'm going to combine two. I've got two related to AI, so I'm going to ask them. The first one is, how are academic journals combating AI generated text? That's one. The second one is, I've heard senior colleagues suggest using AI as a first round editor, especially for those who are self-conscious about their writing. What do you think? Of that or AI in general? So who would like to start with an answer to those? All right, Susan, let's hear what you got.
So I would encourage everyone thinking about using AI to look at your journal's AI policy. Different journals have different AI policies, and I was working with my editorial team to develop our AI policy recently. So I did a little survey of what other folks are doing. Some are saying you can use it for summative, like for like refining language, but not generative. And others are, there are different policies. So be very careful to read the policy and abide by it. At my journal, at Inks, we decided we do not allow AI at all. So you would have, and I think there was a question about what about having, AI look at grammar. We would say have a human look at your grammar, as opposed to AI. So every journal has perhaps slightly different guidelines. Make sure you're aware of them. At our journal, we do not allow AI, and we have a little thing that you attest when you submit something that says I have not used AI in creating my contribution, my submission. So be aware, be mindful of what the policy might be.
Anyone else want to comment on that, Tara? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I would echo everything that Susan has said there. I would also say that as you are looking over the journal that you are preparing to submit it to, Journal A that you start with may say, hey, we're okay with you using AI in XYZ way. You may get rejected from Journal A and need to shop it around to journals B, C, D, and E. And if you've used AI in the process at different points, if you are operating in an ethical and truth forward fashion, you may be cutting yourself off from publication venues based on your use of AI, and that may change over time. Different fields may have very different approaches to this, but I would say we're in a real period of change right now with how folks are approaching this, but certainly the easiest way for people who are not people who are still skeptics about this technology, the easiest thing is to say, don't use it. So, yeah, I would say be very cautious.
Okay, and then there also are questions about I noticed like journals that are asking you if you use AI, but are journals also like policing AI, right? Using like running it through software, things like that. Or is it just on the honor system, I guess?
As far as I'm aware, all of ours are on the honor system.
Okay.
From what I know, most of those AI checkers are using AI themselves and are
I
not
know.
very reliable. And so really, I don't know that we have a good way to confirm whether or not an author has used AI, but we do ask that people use the honor system and at least disclose whether or not they've used AI. And that depends on the journal and all of that, obviously.
All right.
That's
Thank
the same
you.
case with us, Erica. Same as well.
Same. Yeah, lots and lots of questions about AI. There is another question here that I wanted to just add to this. People are asking about things like Grammarly or Perfect Lit. as AI tools compared to something like ChatGPT or Claude? Are those looked upon differently if, let's say, your institution adds a Grammarly add-on to all your? A lot of institutions are doing that. They're adding Grammarly or other things onto their Microsoft Word packages or their Excel packages, et cetera. Is that something that people disclose? I'm getting a lot of questions about things like that.
I would
I
say
think
that
this,
we care more about generative AI
Okay,
versus
okay,
assistive AI. For one thing,
okay.
assistive is hard to avoid sometimes. Like you said, it's just kind of built in at this point. I think the spell and grammar check in Word is AI powered. So it's sort of unavoidable in a way. Um, so I would say they are viewed differently of like using Grammarly versus using ChatGPT, but I would advise to not let things like Grammarly completely strip your voice
Yeah.
out of what you've written and just make it sound like anyone wrote it because you wrote it and it should sound like you wrote it.
Mhm. I was just going to say we lean on the side of it inks on the side of no AI. And during our editorial meetings, one of my associate editors brought in some studies showing that some of these Grammarly type things actually do change meaning and so forth. So we are encouraging people not to use these as much as possible. We realize this is this is the society we live in with the little squiggly line that says you spelled this wrong, but actually you didn't. It's just a word that it doesn't recognize. So that's why we think the human element is so important. But we also understand you can't always get rid of the squiggly line saying you misspelled a word. So we understand that. I think as has been pointed out earlier, there's an honor system is how we're keeping track of most of it. I would also say that I have learned that it is a scholarship, the scholarly community is a very small world. So, like, be honorable in the scholarly community because if you aren't, then people will know. And for example, like if you submit something to a lot of different journals and then, you also publish it online and then you want to publish it in a journal, if you do things, um, people will know. So be honorable. We're doing our absolute best to be honorable, helpful, and constructive. And I would ask the same of any scholar.
Absolutely. Oh, Tara, yeah.
I would just say real quick, one thread that has woven through this presentation is the idea of letting go of perfectionism. The use of ask yourself why you are tempted to use the AI tool. Is it because you are striving for the illusion of externally sanctified perfect writing? If so, keep in mind that you may not actually be achieving that. You may be introducing all sorts of errors, etc. And also that if you're using AI to try to ameliorate anxiety about not having perfect work, you are probably going to be better positioned to talk to actual people, who scholars in the field, people who are experts, people who know their stylish academic writing, right? Rather than outsourcing that work to something that that can't do that as well as people do.
Great, thank you. Okay, I still have a ton of AI questions, but I'm going to move to something else. And for some of you who didn't get those answered, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer those questions. And also, we here at the Proctor Institute are going to have a kind of a learning collaborative around AI soon. So I'll keep you all posted on that. Okay, here's another one. Could you offer some guidance on the best strategies for adapting a dissertation chapter into a standalone scholarly article? And this came up about 4 times. So what are your thoughts on that?
I would say proceed carefully and thoughtfully. And I say this having received yesterday someone's thesis with the date of defense still on it. So don't just send your thesis or a piece of a dissertation. And it's kind of the same advice in terms of what we've been saying is like you have a dissertation and it's got these great ideas in it. So think about which section fits for which journal, read the journal, look at their submission guidelines, and then think, how do I adapt this? And it is an adaptation process because you won't have the same giant lit review. You think about each piece as a a potential journal article. So it is an adaptation process. You will strip away some of the dissertation, the genre. You think about the genre of the dissertation. You think about the genre of the journal article. So read these journal articles. Think about how you can strategically position these different ideas in your dissertation. And I think that is a really rich, productive way of utilizing that time and that energy that you spent on your dissertation. But take the time to make sure that you have a journal article at the end and not just a chunk of something else.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Someone's asking, how can they sign up to be a peer reviewer?
That is, thank you. Thank you for offering to be a peer reviewer because we adore you. We love you. We treasure you. And I mean that. I'm seriously, it's a lot of work and it's often it's not acknowledged in the way that it should be in job placement in tenure line and things like that. I don't know about other journals. For us, we generally we have a board of people who we often call on to be peer reviewers. We also look to people who are widely published in this area already. So we look to folks who are published and already accomplished in the field. And we also look to people we often look to people who are tenured. We try not to ask people who are working as adjuncts or as assistant professors, not because we don't think they're amazing scholars. We do, but because we don't want to ask them to do this on top of working to publish their own work. So I think different journals have different policies, but we try to be mindful and respectful of people who are trying to get tenure and not asking them to do something else. So it might be different at different journals. However, if you want to volunteer, like, cool, let us know. Maybe, we can think about that. Because here's the thing. We have all of these peer reviewers. They're not getting paid. They're doing this out of a love of the field and the scholarship. The associate editors, none of them get paid. I don't get paid. It's like a full-time job on top of my full-time job. We don't get paid. We do it because we believe in it and we believe in you.
Thank you. I've got a question here about copyright. So what happens to your copyright of your material when you publish with a journal? Anyone want to answer that?
So generally, at least at University of Wisconsin, you're assigning the copyright to UW. I believe you're still the owner of it, but you have given us the full rights to publish it. And you'll sign a contract essentially that says that. You should always read those carefully because they are in fact legal documents. I know ours have to get approved by our legal department before we can change anything. So you should also be reading them carefully before you sign them, make sure you understand. But it should spell out your rights and your responsibilities. So we allow authors to publish the author accepted version on their website or deposit that in any institutional repository as may be required. But you're generally not allowed to post the final version online because that is the version that we control the copyright for. And so there are different organizations where things are different. We have one journal that's owned by an association, and the association is the copyright holder there, and we're just the publisher. And so it can vary. And if you have a question, you can always ask either the managing editor, whoever your contact is, or the publisher may have someone in charge of rights and permissions who you can ask who will be the expert on all of those details because copyright can be very complicated. And I turn to our permissions team a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Here's a question that I think there are a couple people asking about this, but it's especially important to assistant professors trying to get tenure. This person is saying, is there a script to ask a journal editor to return your manuscript because the review process is taking too long? And I know that the really long process can be just detrimental to people on the tenure track, but in general, it can be problematic sometimes. So what do you do if that happens? What do you do?
When the process is taking a long time, and it has happened such that let's say this has happened several times, someone agrees to do a review and then they get busy and they don't, and they don't, and they don't. And it takes a long time. When that happens, I generally try to reach out to the author and say, I am so sorry. This is taking longer than I would like. This is where we are. Um, if someone were to say to me, I need to rescind, I need to, opt out of the process, I would completely understand. Again, we're all professionals and I try and communicate when it's taking a long time. And if you need to pull your article for whatever reason, let me know. That I would encourage just to keep those lines of communication open. I try and do that. It takes longer than I like sometimes. And I understand.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more question. And I did a little bit of adding some answering a few questions via the chat here for people as well. So one question that's in here that I think is interesting, we talked a little bit about this, but people are wondering, like, how do you know when your article is ready to submit? Like, how do you don't want to be a perfectionist, but how do you know when it's time to actually submit it? Like, can you feel it? Is there something, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes with qualitative research, people will be like, oh, you reach saturation. Is it, I mean, I know for me, I tend to read my articles out loud so that I can find the mistakes. And when it starts to sound good out loud, I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to go. But what about any advice?
For me, when I've read the submission guidelines, I've read the journal, I feel like it's a good fit. And when I get to the point where, for me, again, and I think it's, an individual process. For me, when I start really quibbling with language, when I'm like, should I say very there? Or maybe I add a, and I start quibbling and like fussing with the language, then I'm like, no, I need to let that go and then get like substantive feedback that will actually take this in a new direction. Personally, when I start just fiddling with it, when I've done all of those steps, I highly recommend reading out loud. That's a great thing to do. Um, Read the submission guidelines, read the journal article, read it out loud, had my friends all read it, and I start fiddling with it, then I'm like, yeah, this is not productive anymore. It needs to go to the next stage. That's my personal response.
Um, All right, friends. Well, we are at the end of the hour, and I just want to say thank you so much to our amazing panel, all of this great advice. I wish I would have had this when I was a young scholar. Absolutely great advice. Thank you to the Association of University Presses for co-sponsoring this. Thanks to our team behind the scenes, Giselle and Jacinda, always doing great work. And we did record this. We will send it out to you. We will also send the different resources that we mentioned in the chat. We'll send links to those. And if you ended up not getting your question answered, feel free to send an email to me. I'm happy to forward it to one of our panel, or I'm happy to answer if I can as well. So thank you so much for spending time with us today at the Proctor Institute and the Center for Minority Serving Institutions. And I hope you really enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everybody. Bye.